Good to have you with us on this Friday. Here's what's happening right now. A man at the center of a CTV W5 investigation facing dozens of new sex assault charges.
Do believe that there would be more victims that may not necessarily know that they were victims.
Accused of multiple disturbing betrayals of trust.
It's not a question of if it'll burn the line, it's just a question of when.
Plus, forced from their homes as wildfires rage out of control.
She turned to me and she said, "Dad, are we going to die?"
And a family's terrifying account of a nightmare in the Caribbean.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
I'm Todd Vanderheyden. Heather is off today. We begin with developing news concerning a man at the center of a major story by CTV's investigative unit W5 into an alleged sex assault ring. The man now facing a list of new charges.
Do believe that there would be more victims that may not necessarily know that they were victims of Bryan Hayward.
Bryan Hayward appeared in a courtroom in Hamilton, Ontario today. He was charged with multiple new counts of aggravated assault, other offenses. The W5 investigation unveiled a network of thousands of men secretly drugging and raping their wives and partners and then posting the images online. Hayward will remain in custody and will be back in court on July the 11th. To a troubling story now, and new concerns about racism, sexism, homophobia in the Canadian military. A Facebook page is being condemned by senior military leadership over its deeply offensive comments. Tracking the story is CTV's Rachel Aiello. And Rachel, what more do we know here about what's playing out?
Todd, the Canadian Armed Forces is investigating members of a private Facebook group that included content the Army's commanding officer has called abhorrent. The group, known as the Blue Hackle Mafia, was first reported to the chain of command last December. Initially, military police launched an investigation into historic complaints about the private page. But the case was then transferred to the unit whose members were allegedly involved to conduct its own disciplinary investigation. The Office of the Canadian Forces Provost Marshal said today that transfer was considered the best use of options available in this case. But after the commander of the armed forces said he was made aware of the page last week, military police reopened their investigation. In a statement, Lieutenant General Michael Wright said the content posted included racist, misogynistic, homophobic, and anti-Semitic comments and images, and that this type of behavior is unacceptable, and any member who engages in inappropriate behavior should expect to face consequences. This comes amid ongoing efforts within the military to rehabilitate its image and reform its culture after years of reported misconduct. Military police said today that as the investigation is ongoing, no further information will be provided. And Defense Minister David McGuinty called the alleged behavior completely unacceptable. Todd?
Rachel Aiello in Ottawa. Thanks, Rachel. New federal immigration numbers confirmed to CTV News show the surprising number of people entering Canada with prior criminal records. Canada approved more than 17,000 applications between 2014 and 2024, or about 70% of the requests that were made. Immigration Canada saying, quote, people with past convictions outside Canada must demonstrate they have been rehabilitated and do not pose a risk. Adding the policy has helped reunite families and allowed performers and athletes to enter Canada despite having criminal records. Comments today by President Trump's ambassador to Canada casting doubt on whether a trade deal between our country and the U.S. will actually be signed later this month. In Washington, CTV's Adrian Grobriel with the U.S. celebrating today the 4th of July holiday. Adrian.
Todd, from the White House to the National Mall to right here at the Independence Day Parade. Many are taking to the streets on this July 4th to celebrate the day and use their voice in different ways to mark the festivities.
Pomp and plenty of patriotic pageantry as thousands gather in the U.S. Capitol to celebrate America's 249th birthday.
And everyone's more patriotic, and everyone seems to be loving the 4th of July festivities this year.
Though some share their love for country by gathering in protest against the current U.S. administration with a reading of the Declaration of Independence.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
I'm deeply ashamed by my country right now.
Carolyn Smith is an architect from Ohio. She says President Donald Trump's tariffs on Canadian building materials resulted in her being laid off just 2 months ago.
The projects that I was working on are starting to feel the effects of that lack of access to materials.
Meanwhile, in Ottawa, U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra celebrated the day while stopping short of committing to a July 21st deadline to reach a trade deal with Canada.
The president has made it clear. I think every country is going to pay some level of tariffs, but the overall agreement, I think at the end of the day, is going to be good for Canada, and I think it's going to be good for America.
Back on the parade route, we met Nova Scotia native John Babcock, who left Canada 25 years ago and now operates a business in the U.S.
It's been the best year I've ever had in business. I think with the changes Trump has made, we're going to see our most profitable year ever, even with some of the higher prices that we have to pay in tariffs. So I'm really positive about it.
On this 4th of July, nearly everyone taking in the day want the same thing, a better future for America, though many remain divided, perhaps now more than ever, on the path towards a truly United States. Todd.
Adrian Gobriel in Washington. Thanks, Adrian. Meantime, we know cross-border tourism has taken a hit since Trump began his second term as president, but that doesn't mean there aren't Americans still visiting Canada on July the 4th. We sent CTV's Paul Hollingsworth out today in Halifax to talk to some of those visitors. Paul.
Todd, the summer tourist season is officially in full swing, and there appears to be no shortage of Americans who have traveled north of the border for the 4th of July. There's a huge holiday celebration in the U.S., yet Texan Brenda Byers chose to experience Independence Day in Canada. Why does someone from Austin, Texas come to Nova Scotia to celebrate July 4th?
My son was born here 45 years ago, and I'm visiting my friends, and we love it. I love it here.
She's not alone. Mike and Barbara Randos traveled to Nova Scotia from Pennsylvania.
We feel a bond with Canada.
Pushing the trade war and rising tensions between both countries aside, Randos is doing his part to strengthen and repair any fractures in the Canada-U.S. relationship.
My personal opinion, I hope that connection continues.
The Philgate family is also making connections, having lots of fun, and posting pictures of their Canadian RV trip on social media. The Philgates will go home to Savannah, Georgia this weekend, but they can't wait for their next vacation north of the border.
I was excited to come here. It's not my first trip to Canada. I've always found Canadians like the nicest people ever. And so far, everywhere we've gone, it's been like it's always been. Just really nice people, really welcoming people.
Big picture, American visitation to Canada is up so far this year compared to 2024, and tourism operators expect July and August to also be busy, with dozens of cruise ships bringing Americans to our country. Todd.
All right, thanks very much, Paul. A surge in new spending by the Liberal government is raising alarms about Canada's growing deficit. CTV's Mike Lecouteur digs into the numbers to find out what's causing all the concern.
Canada will achieve NATO's 2% of GDP target this year.
That promise will cost the government $9 billion this fiscal year. But a new study by the C.D. Howe Institute says when you add in other election promises, Canada's deficit could balloon to $92 billion.
This is now surreal. I mean, we're sitting on a deficit that's already probably $70 billion without doing any of these. Surely they're not going to come, but they were in the election platform.
That platform also promised to offset spending by finding billions in operating efficiencies. A report from the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives believes that will mean cuts to the public service.
Now it's 24%, which would actually be the biggest cut to federal government operating expenditures ever for those departments.
Both think tanks say their reports are estimates based on available data in the absence of a federal budget, which opposition parties complain should have been presented before Parliament went on summer break. A statement from the finance minister's spokesperson said the government is making targeted investments to support the middle class, adding, "We remain committed to a responsible fiscal approach, one that strengthens Canada's position as the strongest, most resilient economy in the G7.
There's not a lot of waste.
Public service unions warn if the government starts to cut jobs, Canadians will feel it.
You know, you look at the various departments like National Defence, Indigenous Services Canada, Statistics Canada, Health Canada, you know, those are not departments you're cutting. They are providing key services to Canadians day in, day out.
Other public service unions confirm thousands of jobs have already been cut, and they warn Canadians will feel the effects when they apply for a passport or file their income tax. Todd?
CTV's Mike Lucouture in Ottawa. Thanks, Mike. Let's get to the wildfire situation now, starting in Manitoba, where hundreds of people in the northern community of Lin Lake are being told to get out. CTV's Alex Karpa joins me now with more. And Alex, there is really no end in sight for people caught in the path of the fires.
Todd, the situation is rapidly changing in Lin Lake, and the roughly 600 residents that live in the town are being asked to pack their bags and leave not even 2 weeks after returning home from their first evacuation notice. The town of Lin Lake, which sits over 1,000 kilometers northwest of Winnipeg, is battling two out-of-control wildfires, one north of the town and another smaller fire just southwest of Lin Lake. This fairly new fire is threatening the main power transmission line for Lin Lake, which, if destroyed, could cause a loss of power to the community for at least a month.
Today we're receiving winds of 60 kilometers an hour blowing directly at that line. So we've been told from wildfire, it's not a question of if it'll burn the line, it's just a question of when. So we're anticipating any minute right now losing power to the community.
This is the second mandatory evacuation order for the town of Lin Lake, with the first one issued at the end of May. It was lifted almost a month later, with residents being able to return home. Mayor Brandon Dulowich says the town is working hard to get everyone out by tonight.
We've got flights arranged that will be landing directly in Brandon, Manitoba, and they will be going to a reception center and then straight into hotel rooms.
Manitoba has been dealing with one of its worst wildfire seasons in recent years. There are currently 60 active wildfires right across the province, with 17 of them out of control. Todd?
Alex Karpa in Winnipeg. Thanks, Alex. And from Manitoba to Saskatchewan, where more northern communities are seeing evacuation orders now being upgraded to mandatory. CTV's Alison Bamford joins us now. And Alison, how are they dealing with the ever-changing conditions?
Well, Todd, heavy smoke and shifting winds in the northern village of Beauval and neighboring English River First Nation were two of the main reasons officials changed a voluntary evacuation order to mandatory. Roadblocks are set up to stop vehicles from driving closer to the flames. As of last night, 75% of Beauval had evacuated, about 525 people. But not everyone plans to leave. The general store was asked to stay open as an essential service.
Firefighters, they all need gasoline. They need all the food items and everything.
The store isn't under any fire threat right now, but there could come a time where they also have to flee for safety.
But the thing is, we never know because the wind is blowing so crazy today.
There are 64 active fires burning across the province, 20 of them not contained. While crews fight to keep flames at bay, a Saskatoon law firm is exploring the potential for a class action lawsuit against the provincial government related to this year's wildfire damage.
And we're just discovering all the problems right now, too, mostly connected in with a lack of resources, lack of planning, but also examples of negligence, and that's where you get into potential for legal action.
The Saskatchewan government hasn't been served with any legal claims and would not comment further on what officials called a hypothetical court matter. Todd?
Alison Bamford in Saskatoon. Thanks, Alison. Coming up, shipwrecked in the middle of the sea.
If we have any hope of being rescued, we don't need to be adrift.
A family's remarkable story of survival. To a terrifying situation for a Canadian family sailing in the Caribbean. Their sailboat was blown into a reef, leading to a dramatic rescue by the U.S. Coast Guard. CTV's John Woodward spoke to them today from the Bahamas. John, tell us more about their story, what they went through.
Todd, they said it started out as the voyage of a lifetime, but earlier this week, disaster struck. The boat battered by waves, taking on water, and it was not at all clear that the couple and their 8-year-old daughter would survive. Krista Scholl and Tony Bryant saved for years in Toronto, fixing up their 41-foot sailboat Mischief before setting sail for a life at sea.
We were part of the downtown Toronto rat race for 9 years.
Got on the move at 6:30 this morning.
By 2023, they were working remotely from the sailboat deck and showing their 8-year-old daughter Adelaide the world.
Every place we'd go to, there'd be something different. Like there's dolphins jumping off the bow. Like we'd learn about dolphins.
Then on Sunday, some 5,000 nautical miles from where they began, it was the weather making mischief. Their vessel was blown off course into a reef in the Bahamas. Waves battered the vessel. It took on water through a hull breach. They frantically put Adelaide in the life raft.
It's something that will stick with me for the rest of my life. But she turned to me and she said, "Dad, are we going to die?" I said, "Not tonight, kiddo. We ain't dying tonight."
A passing ship heard their mayday calls via flashlights and flares and called the U.S. Coast Guard, which launched a helicopter.
Shockingly, the most amazing noise I've ever heard, hearing a helicopter approaching.
By 2:30 in the morning, the family was hoisted into the chopper.
I'm sure it was very scary for her because the noise and the whipping, the spray of the whipping water. And I think at that point for me, it was the moment where I was like, okay, we're going to be okay.
The next step for this family is replacing lost passports and coming back to Canada. They've started a GoFundMe page to help with the costs in the Bahamas and on the journey home, and they're hoping that Canada's Global Affairs staff will come through. Todd?
CTV's John Woodward in Toronto. Thanks, John. Still ahead, a shocking sight unraveling the mystery of this glowing ball of light. That's next. Hundreds of thousands of people lined the streets of Calgary today for the Stampede Parade, with one of Canada's biggest music stars leading the way.
The spirit of the West is alive and well here in Calgary.
There she is, Shania Twain, this year's parade marshal. The 5-time Grammy winner last performed at the Stampede in 2014 and will take to the Saddle Dome stage tomorrow as well. Along with Stampede fans, the Calgary Stampede runs until July the 13th. Montreal smoked meat, an iconic dish. Now it's made it onto a prestigious list of the best sandwiches in the world. Yep, Montreal smoked meat cracking CNN's top 25 sandwiches in the world. Like a pile of delicious aged brisket on rye, the list served up a stacked roster of handhelds from the New Orleans po' boy to Vietnamese banh mi. It described the smoked meat sandwich as something carnivores will say oui to. Canada's no stranger to wild weather, this we know, but one couple in Alberta capturing stunning video what could be a phenomenon known as ball lightning. CTV's John Venevalley-Rao explains.
While thunderstorms can produce all sorts of spectacular displays, what this Alberta couple saw this week was truly next level.
What is it?
Capturing this bizarre and brilliant ball of light moving across the horizon.
It's like a fireball, but not really. It's the wrong color.
They say the spectacle lasted about a minute and began with a bolt of lightning that struck just under a kilometer from their home. Ed Party says it spawned the display.
It was probably anywhere from 1 meter to 2 meters in diameter, so it was fairly large. And then, I don't know, about 20 feet above the ground.
The couple were amazed and scrambled to film it with a phone.
I was like, what is this? I've never seen this before. No, it was pretty neat.
A neat sight that had Ed immediately wondering if it was the mysterious thing he'd read about as a kid called ball lightning.
After we shut the video off and it disappeared, I'm like, oh, so that's what that looks like.
For more than a century, there have been reported sightings of rare and strange floating energy balls that are said to have even gone into people's homes. Those several supposed videos of ball lightning have been debunked as fakes.
We've got this really bright light out here.
We asked longtime storm chaser George Karunas for his opinion.
If this is indeed ball lightning, this is one of the best ball lightning videos I've ever seen.
But he wonders if what we're seeing is the result of lightning hitting a power line and an arc of electricity traveling along it.
This exhibits all the characteristics of a persistent, slow-moving, arcing power line.
Ed and Melinda doubt that.
Definitely not.
No, it's a long ways away from a power line.
And they say no matter what this is, it was cool to see. John Venevalley-Rao, CTV News, Toronto.
Very cool. After the break, Canada's baseball team flying high, why the Blue Jays' latest performance has fans going wild. Finally for us, the world of baseball, where the Toronto Blue Jays are now at the top of their division. It's leading to a surge of fan fanatics. CTV's Allison Hurst is in Toronto with more on how fans, Allison, are reacting to this sizzling season.
Todd, we've been speaking with fans from coast to coast, some who went to the last series and others who are going to the next one. All of them swept up in the excitement.
The Yankees leave Canada dry.
A 4-game series sweep at home against the Yankees, a franchise first, and knocked them off the top spot in the division.
We made special arrangements flying from Halifax early yesterday morning, had to change airline tickets to see the game last night. And was it worth every penny?
Bill Karsten, his daughters and granddaughter, travel to see the Jays every year and have quite the record.
Go Blue Jays, go! The actual record would be somewhere in the ballpark of 9 wins out of 12.
Support welcomed by a team insiders had written off earlier in the season.
It is a shift of power, and it is a wake-up call for all of them.
Worth seeing for fans from the other coast, too. Susan and Doug McLeod and Shannon Delosky are here from Dawson's Creek.
Traveled a long way to see them keep winning.
They're just doing the right things they need to do to win.
They're here for the next series, but they caught last night's game.
And he's done it again!
When George Springer went deep twice to clinch the series sweep.
How about those Springer dingers, right?
Setting them apart from the division, the Jays are alone in the top spot in the AL East.
The building has been electric, the fan base, just the atmosphere in here, it feels different, and it's something everyone in Toronto should really experience.
Ethan Evans and his family chose a staycation to take in the excitement.
I think they can win against the Los Angeles Angels, and I'm excited.
For Emma Keating, attending tonight's game is a high school graduation gift.
It's pretty exciting, yeah, because last season they weren't doing very well, but this season they're doing very well.
Derek Burns came from South Porcupine near Timmins for Canada Day and decided to stay for the whole series.
A great rivalry, and it turned out to be nothing more than spectacular.
Fans hope the offense keeps rolling into the next series. The Jays are looking to stay on top of the AL East. This is the first time they've led the division this late in the season since 2016. They face the LA Angels tonight. Todd.
All right. CTV's Allison Hurst in Toronto. Thanks, Allison. The Jays on a roll. That's our newscast on this Friday. Be sure to join Omar Sachedina later tonight. And for ongoing coverage of Canada's top stories, breaking news as it happens, watch CTV News channel. I'm Todd Vanderheyden, and your local CTV News is coming up next.